And welcome to the Cedar Falls regular City Council meeting this November 19, 2018. I'll now call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call from Madam Clerk, please.
Miller.
Here.
DeBoer.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Blanford.
Here.
Dara.
Here.
Wieland. Here. Green.
Here.
All members present, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 1, is there a motion to approve the regular meeting of November 5th?
So moved.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. I will now turn things over to Director Olson for the administration of oath to our new public safety officers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we have the privilege of swearing in two of our newest public safety officers, Officer Scott Dugan and Austin Lechtenberg. I'll just read you a real brief bio on each one of them. Scott Dugan grew up in Newton, Iowa, got his bachelor's from the University of Northern Iowa. He attended Iowa Law Enforcement Academy in the summer of 2016. He's been a Blackhawk County Sheriff's Deputy since January of 2016. Officer Austin Lechtenberg grew up in DeWitt, Iowa, and got his bachelor's from Wartburg, where he played baseball. He attended the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy in fall of 2017. He's worked for the Indianola Police Department since the fall of 2017, and his father's been a DCI agent for a number of years. So we're swearing in. Come on.
If you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Scott Dugan,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and comply
that I will support and comply
with the Constitution of the United States of America,
with the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Iowa,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Iowa,
the Charter laws
the Charter laws,
and ordinances of the City of Cedar Falls,
and ordinances of the City of Cedar Falls,
the rules and regulations
the rules and regulations
of the Cedar Falls Police Department,
of the Cedar Falls Police Department,
the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics,
the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics,
and that I will faithfully
and I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
discharge the duties of my position
discharge the duties of my position
as police officer
as police officer
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now we have folks up here to pin the badges on. Is that right, Director Olson? And then a couple signatures. Make sure that you come on board the right way. And if we can please welcome Cedar Falls' newest and finest. And thanks to the families for showing up for support. I will ask at this time if there's any agendas from the Madam Clerk, please.
There are no agenda revisions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to old business. Item 2 is Pass Ordinance 2934, amending the Code of Ordinances by removing property located at the north end of Lakeshore Drive from A1, placing the same in R1 upon its third and final consideration. Is there a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. Anything further from council? Third and final? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 3 is a resolution approving the preliminary plat of Park Ridge Estates subdivision. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council? I will open it up to anyone in the public for comment. Yes, sir. Come on up and state your name and address, if you would, please. Make sure that microphone's right there.
My name's James Hancock, and I'm a resident of the Lakewood Hills Addition, which is directly south of this subdivision that's being developed. And I spoke at 2 Planning and Zoning Committee meetings, and I'd like to reiterate a few comments to the City Council and to the city that I spoke there. First, I would like to again recognize and commend the CGA Engineering Group and Brian Wingert for the work that was done on this project, and that the changes that have been made to the subdivision storm sewer planning will greatly improve the conditions of the future. However, I'd like to point out and emphasize that, as noted in the CGA report, which I believe council members have a copy of, and on page 20 you would find that, there's a major inadequacy identified on the existing Lakeshore Drive street sewer system. And as stated in the report under concern 1, where it says inadequacy of storm sewer, which does refer to Lakeshore Drive, it says that during large rain events, it is apparent that these intakes cannot handle the amount of runoff, and therefore runoff ponds then overflows to the north in the general direction of the toe of the dam. While storm sewer is generally not designed to convey large rain events, we agree that the current route of the overflow is not ideal. The large quantity of runoff over time is detrimental to the dam. Well, I'm here to tell you that anybody that's looked at the dam and sees the damage and what has occurred there would recognize that. This was also confirmed by a Lake Association contract engineer, Stephen E. Jones, which is a consultant who is a renowned expert in that field, and who also determined that the stormwater system sewer is grossly inadequate, even below the 5-year flood condition standards. The extreme water flow at the head of the dam created undercutting conditions around the output pipe of the dam, and that has eroded the dirt and concrete around the pipe. The work to repair that damage to the dam pipe area is about $20,000. My question to the city is that being considered that the city will take care of that. Perhaps the city overlooked that when the Lilliput addition was added onto Lakeshore Drive, or for whatever reason, the amount of overland water flow that has been hitting the nose of the dam has damaged the dam. I know the city is aware of the condition and is considering how to address it, but I'd like to formally request that the city provide funding and re-engineering to adequately size the existing part of Lakeshore Drive as well, and preferably it would be conducted and performed in conjunction with the Park Ridge Estates development, which would prevent tearing out some of the new work that'll be part of the new development and to fix the existing condition.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Anyone else from the public?
My name is Tammy Stahl. I'm directly adjacent to the proposed development, and I live at 1009 Lakeshore Drive. And I just want to state that I think it was important to the members of this committee that there be a full water study done in connection with this proposed development. And when the last planning and zoning meeting took place last week, I don't feel that an adequate water study was done. And I called and spoke with John Resler, and asked about this. It seemed like it was just a basic study of what came down our street and not what was, it seemed like the study was done on what was coming down Lilliput and not what is actually coming down our street, not including at all the water that is backing up out of the street drains. And I've never gotten any response to that. And so I still believe to this time that there's not really been an adequate water study done, other than to say it's not adequate. But I think it's important to know how much water is coming in at different amount of rain events and how it's affecting the area before all of this development takes place, so that it's not inadequately done and money wasted on inadequate drains and such. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stahl. Anyone further? Open up to council for questions amongst themselves or to staff?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to have staff address the comments that were put forth here regarding Lilliput Lane coming down to Lakeshore. Comments I've heard is that in rain events, water bubbles up in these storm sewers at the base there, if you call it the base, or the connecting point. And I know I've read, and I think last meeting, or one of the last meetings, we talked about moving the low point. All these things will help, but we've got an issue here where it's probably undersized, and how do we address that with a study like was mentioned? How do we deal with that?
So we did ask CGA to give us an estimate on the cost to do a study of what's draining to that particular point at Lilliput and Lakeshore Drive, because that is south of the development, so that would not be the developer's responsibility. We wanted to see what is flowing to that area, and are those intakes at that particular intersection appropriately sized. So we have a cost estimate, so we can bring a contract forward so that the city can take a look at that and determine if there's any issue that we need to address.
So then the Stormwater Management Fund would be coming to that, or contributing to that, I'm assuming? Or how does this get funded then, so that we...
I think we would, if we determine that there is some issue that needs to be addressed, then we would identify the appropriate funding source to help resolve that.
Okay. Then the comment where the overflow goes down to the tow area, spillway area of the dam, and erodes where the current output is, there's damage there. There's pictures in the packet to that regard. Would the city with, I know the developer said they'd contribute to some riprap or some help with the repair. What's the city's position there to contribute?
I may ask the city engineer if he might provide any comments on this, but from what I recall in the documents and even the involvement of the DNR was that some of the erosion happening was actually in Larry Hill's side of the property line, and that was part of where the development is occurring and would be addressed by that, and that there were some areas, I'll say downstream of the dam, that were part of the dam's issue, not necessarily because of overflow that was occurring. So I need to
Well,
look at that a little bit more.
the pictures show the overflow from Lakeshore Drive and Lilyport and the storm intakes not being sufficient. Surface water coming down then in through the easement in the area of the input. And I know it's been suggested that they have to repair the tow area. And I'd like to see how we're going to work on a potential cost sharing of contributory percentages where the water's coming from.
And I think we can look into all of those items with regard to, we'll probably work with CGA and the developer just to put a good set of construction plans together so we're not duplicating or have to tear out any of these improvements. So we'll put a package together and probably bring that back to the council for approval for funding.
Okay. So that's part of the approval process here for the plat. The city's going to formally do this.
Would be separate contracts we'd bring forward on the drainage item.
But the commitment's there, I think, is what Daryl's getting at.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anything further from council, Mr. Fuller?
The other drains that Ms. Stahl talked about, were those going to be done in this review that you were just talking about, Stephanie? Or were you just looking at the Lilliput ones?
At the intakes at that Lilliput and Lakeshore Drive intersection, which I think they're both technically on Lilliput there, if I'm not mistaken.
They're at the intersection, yeah.
Right at the intersection. Yeah.
So it's just the two drains you're looking at?
Mic 'em up.
Actually, what
We have
we'll
a
look at
couple
is we'll look at the entire drainage system to make sure that you don't want to correct one input or one intake, and all of a sudden you're creating another problem. So the study will address all of the localized storm sewer in the area.
And those actually have nothing to do with this plat?
Well, it all drains into the same area.
Anything further from council?
So will that then affect the timing of the development? If we're having to wait for this other study?
I wouldn't anticipate that it would because there's not a lot of work that can be done during the winter months. So I would anticipate in the coming months, we'll be talking with CGA, bringing a contract forward, and they'll look at that. So I think the construction schedules, it'll work out just fine.
Question.
Yes.
Is it true that the dam itself is private property and up to a private individual to maintain and take care of its integrity?
That is correct, yes.
Anything further from council, Mr. Green?
Just to be clear, was it safe to say that this new existing, or this new development would compound an existing drainage problem in that neighborhood, and that our way forward on this is to alleviate that problem prior to actual development there? Is that a fair statement?
The development would not compound the problem. There is very, very little water from this development that is coming back towards the development and towards the lake. But what we want to do is, we know all this water comes off the edge of the roadway and down and follows the toe of the dam. So we've been working with the developer and CGA to move that low point to the north, get it away from the dam, and then to try to size the pipes appropriately and also design some detention basins. And I really told the consultant the most important thing we can do is really slow the velocities of that water down. I mean, that's really what's causing a lot of the erosion problems. So get it away from the dam, slow the water down, reduce the erosion impact. And then we've been discussing all along of the actual intersection of Lilliput and Lakeshore, saying, you know, this is really not different than any other drainage problem we have in town in an older area where design standards have changed and storm sewer is inadequate. We brought forward that, yes, it all costs money, but this would be the most cost-effective time to do something at that intersection while this other work is going on, while we'd be paying maybe to upsize a pipe versus to put in a new pipe completely and dig up the soil and then put it in the pipe in its place. So, but also knowing that there are limitations on budget, but we're working through that. So really now is the time to do it, and we would hope that we could. So,
Mayor? John, there were a couple residents, or at least one other resident that is further than north that had talked about erosion and whatnot. The plan that they put together with detention ponds and whatnot, in theory, should slow down erosion all the way down that creek or stream, if you will?
yes, it should. Correct.
Okay.
Very good. It's been motion the motion and second requires a roll call vote, please. Thank you, John.
6 voting aye, 1 voting, or 1 abstention.
Very good, thank you. It does pass. The next item is new business, the consent calendar. The following items will be acted upon by a voice vote in a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or the public requests an item to be pulled for such discussion. Any such request from council? From the public? I'll now summarize the consent calendar. Item 4 is receive and file the following resignations: Joni Krejci from the Art and Culture Board and Steve Schofield from the Visitors and Tourism Board. I want to thank those folks for their service. Item 5 is approve the following recommendation of the mayor relative to the appointment of members to the boards and commissions: Kendra Wallert, the Art and Culture Board, and Meredith Main, the Historic Preservation Commission. Again, thank you very much for serving the city. Item 6 is approve a request for street closure for Holiday Hoopla on November 23rd. Item 7 is approve applications for permits, and 8 is approving applications for permits and licenses. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next item is a resolution calendar. These items will be acted upon by a roll call vote in a single motion without separate discussion, unless someone from the council or the public requests item to be pulled for such discussion. Any such request from council?
16.
I'm sorry?
16.
16. Anyone else on council? From the public? Hearing and seeing none, I will summarize the resolution calendar. Items 9 and 10 are resolutions approving and adopting the City of Cedar Falls employee health and dental plans. Items 11, 12, and 13 are resolutions levying a final assessment for costs incurred by the city to mow the property located at Coventry Lane, Maplewood Drive, and the corners of Lincoln and Greeley Streets. 14 is approving and authorizing execution of an agreement for the city's new custom mobile app. 15 is approving and authorizing execution of an agreement for development of a strategic plan for the Cedar Falls Tourism Visitors Bureau with the University of Northern Iowa Institute of Decision Making. Item 17 is approving and authorizing execution of purchase agreements, utility agreements, and grading easements in conjunction with the West First Street reconstruction. Item 18 is resolution approving a Central Business District Overlay Zoning District site plan for renovations on Main Street. 19 is approving a College Hill neighborhood site plan for improvements on West 23rd Street. Item 20 is approving and authorizing execution of an offer to buy real estate and acceptance relative to expansion of the West Viking Road Industrial Park. 21 is approving a zoning district site plan for construction of an office building. 22 is a resolution setting November 27th as the date of consultation and the 17th of December as the date of public hearing on a proposed amendment number 5 to the Downtown Development Area Urban Renewal Plan. And 23 is a resolution setting the November 27th as the date of consultation and 17th of December as the date of public hearing on a proposed amendment number 5 to the Cedar Falls Unified Highway 58 Corridor Urban Renewal Plan. Is there a motion to approve the resolution calendar minus item 16?
So moved.
Been motion second. Anything further from council? Requires a roll call vote.
A voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Circling back to 16, it reads, a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a professional service agreement relative to the Ridgeway Avenue reconstruction project. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Open it up for council discussion.
My question was, we haven't really discussed Ridgeway Avenue reconstruction, and I wondered when we were going to be presented with documentation as to what they want to do or why they want to do it.
Was it you, Stephanie, in terms of that
This
project?
is related to the development proposal, the site plan and rezoning that was recently approved by the City Council for the property at the southwest corner of Ridgeway and 58. And along with that are some road improvements to Ridgeway that would be necessitated as a part of that development. So with that traffic study, there were some phase 1 and phase 2 improvements that were identified. The site plan showed those, and what we worked with the developer to do is create an agreement for them to cover their portion of the expenses through a development agreement that will be on the council's future agenda. This is then the contract to get into the design for the construction plans and be ready to work on reconstructing part of the road, including the improvements needed for this particular development.
Did it also include anything recommended by the Iowa DOT, or was this only for the development of that corner?
Well, it handles the span from 58 to the west entrance of the property. So there will be, in the phase 2 part of the improvements on Ridgeway, there will be improvements on the Ridgeway side at the 58 and Ridgeway intersection. For example, we're anticipating there'll be dual left turn lanes to go northbound onto 58 that are part of those improvements. We also then know that the DOT is in a contract, a design contract right now for reconstruction of 58 from Ridgeway down to 20. That will include adding dual left turn lanes at Ridgeway and 58 for the 58 travelers.
So will that mean that part of this will be paid for by the DOT, or is it?
Not part of this contract in front of you. That will be a separate project by the DOT.
Thank you.
Anything further from council? This motion second requires a roll call vote, please.
A voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The next item is there a motion to allow bills and payroll?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. This requires a roll call vote, please.
A voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The next item, does council have any referrals this evening? Hearing and seeing none, does council have any updates? Hearing and seeing none. Next is the executive session to go to executive session to discuss property acquisition per Iowa Code Section 2151J to discuss the purchase or sale of particular real estate following public forum. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. This requires a roll call vote, please.
A voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Before moving on to the public forum, I'd like to read again a public reply from an agenda item that was requested once again from some individuals. I wanted to read again the reply I sent to these individuals. It does say, "Dear Sharon," in the stand-up page, "thank you again for your request to place a public forum on the regular council agenda for a vote. There are two ways of placing this type of this type of item on the agenda. One you have requested now twice directly through the mayor. The other is in the form of council referral. Frankly, this is how items typically get placed on future agendas, since the council is the ultimate decision-making body for Cedar Falls. The November 5th meeting was a great example of a public forum whereby Cedar Falls citizens, council, staff, and I were presented with both sides of the public safety issue. I stand by my statement that the stand-up Facebook page was, quote, at least established, if not administered, by a current Cedar Falls firefighter and his spouse, per the attached. I am once again denying this request. Sincerely, Jim Brown. I will now open it up for public forum. Speakers will have up to one opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on topics germane to city business. Anyone here wishing to speak in public comments this evening, come on up, please. Just your name and address, please.
Tracy Solentic, 1008 Rockland Street, Cedar Falls. I printed this off of the city website. Operations of your guys' operations. This states that you guys have a contracted protection service through the University of Northern Iowa with a population of 13,000 students. The question was raised on the 5th about money that you guys get from the university that's put into the general fund, and that question wasn't answered that day. Where's that money at? Why is it getting put into general operating and not into fire protection? And then this one is a big problem for me, and I think a lot of North Cedar people that live out there, especially after our house fire. Fire operations. The Station 1, or fire headquarters, is located at 18th Street in Maine. 2 substations. Fire Station 2 is located on Lone Tree Drive. When staffed, Station 2 will serve all of North Cedar and the Cedar River, as well as the initial response to the north of First Street. That shouldn't be listed on your website if it's not an active fire station. And when was the last time it was staffed? The flood of 2016. That's the last time it was staffed. And so if that brings down your ISO rating, that's not a fair and truthful statement to make. This page is printed off of Iowa Cares, which that vice president from Washington told us all that we can look at. And again, on this one, it's listed as 723 West Lone Tree as the second fire station. And also, there was, evidently, my husband didn't grab it, but 50% of your rating for the ISO score comes from the distribution of fire stations throughout the city. And so by putting North Cedar down on your list on the city and other things documenting this as a fire station, does that bring that score down? Because that's not a true rating if that's not an active fire station. And we know it's not. And so you guys know it's not. And so to me, that's just not a truthful thing. And we know that that could affect that ISO rating. So I think it needs to come off the website. It needs to be put out there that that's not an active fire station. And so.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Anyone further? Seeing none for anyone further for public comment, open it up to council for any questions or comments to yourself or staff.
Mayor, I just wanted to address the funding issue. I just thought we'd clarify that question. So just for everyone's benefit, when we say the general operating fund, most of our staff is actually paid out of the general operating fund in a lot of our operations, whether it's planning, engineering, finance, police, fire, all of those come out of our general operating. So when our contract with the University of Northern Iowa, they pay us 16% of our fire costs. And so we deposit it back into the general operating fund because that's the same place we're paying 100% of our fire costs. So it would make sense that the revenue's going back in to where the expenses are coming out. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any further questions or comments from council? Director Olson?
If I may just briefly, if there was any, we'll check that website. And if there's any inaccuracies as far as whether Lone Tree is open or not, we can certainly make that correction. ISO certainly wouldn't get their information off of the website. They would get it from other information. 50% of the ISO rating comes from the water supply. I don't believe 50%. Matter of fact, I'm certain 50% doesn't come from the location of fire stations either. So I believe that's in there. But any rating they would get that information from us, not from our website.
Thank you, Director Olson. Nothing further, council. We will adjourn to executive session. Thank you.